You're listening to another ambitious entrepreneurnetwork.com podcast, the voice for entrepreneurs and small business. Now, onto the show.
Welcome to Industry Thought Leader Podcast. Stand out, be heard, influence. Want to influence real change with your message while become known as an authority in your field? Industry Thought Leader Podcast will show you how. Now, over to your host, Anne-Marie Cross.
And welcome to another episode of Industry Thought Leader Podcast, brought to you by Industry Thought Leader Academy. Stand out, be heard, and influence. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Cross, also known as the podcasting queen. Now, my guest today says, if coronavirus does not bring out the inner hustler in you, you don't have one. Joining me on today's show is returning guest Marc Jarrett. Now, Marc is a disruptive, game-changing virtual power connector. And on today's show, Marc's going to share how we should be networking the right way, how to grow our network exponentially, and how to list build effectively. So welcome back to the show.
Great to be back, Anne-Marie. Good day, good morning.
Yes, and good afternoon wherever you are in the world. And of course, for those people who are listening to the recording or watching the recording, welcome, welcome. Now, you really are the hustler when it comes to virtual networking. People who know you know that you have, goodness, how many WhatsApp groups do you have now, Marc?
140, and 3 more were born today.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So rubies, diamonds, and a Moroccan group.
Wow, amazing. Now, when we first connected, and it would have been, when was it that you had the last show? And we were talking about the value of networking online. And then, of course, COVID hit internationally, and many people who were networking face-to-face have now been kind of dragged over to the online platform and have realised just how powerful it is. So when did we speak? Was it November, December of this year, or earlier this year?
Good question. I can't quite recall. My guess is that, it was about 4 or 5 months ago.
Because the time that we spoke, I was just learning about WhatsApp. And what I have learned just through observing you and obviously the conversations and the networks that you have been building, it is an incredibly untapped resource, and even networking in general online. Would you say that's a fair comment to make?
Yes, I would, on the whole. But WhatsApp itself is fairly ubiquitous here in Europe, in India. Strangely, the one country where it's not so popular is its birthplace, the United States of America.
Yes.
But it's owned by Facebook, and 2 billion people use it. So, that's my go-to tool, if you like, in my armory, plus Twitter and of course LinkedIn. And it's a great stepping stone for these kind of calls, visually on Zoom and Remo I use a lot as well, which replicates a real world networking environment with a stage, tables and a breakout area, etc.
Yeah, and of course we also have had the opportunity to network there too. Why I'm talking a little bit about WhatsApp, because I want to kind of show, and you're going to talk a little bit more about how to network the right way, how to grow our network. But I remember learning about WhatsApp, not that I didn't know that it existed, but it really came to my awareness when I went to, probably a few months before that, and a mutual colleague of ours, Keith Keller, was there too, and they were talking about some of the digital trends online, and they talked about WhatsApp and the frequency of people using that. And what's interesting, of course, when we talk about communities being built, and Facebook investing so much money in their group platform, Messenger, and of course, as you said, WhatsApp is owned by them. They're putting a lot of emphasis on kind of the groups, the niched groups, the conversations. And when big industry, such as Facebook and so forth, start to invest in platforms like that, I think as businesses, we need to be mindful of that, because obviously there's some, exciting things happening in there. And of course, one of the things that I talk about when you want to become a trusted authority, one of the three components, one of the three C's is community. The other two are content and charisma, but community. And we're going to talk about that today, because that's what networking is all about, isn't it, Mark? It's building a highly engaged community of like-minded people. And as you said, you've got over 130 something, and I'm sure you will continue to grow that list as the needs arise. So let's dive in. How do we network the right way?
Well, I've been extolling the virtues of virtual networking long before coronavirus reared its ugly head. It's got enormous advantages over in-person networking, not least its globality. I mean, you're 10,000 miles away from where I am. For me to meet you in person will cost a ton of carbon, pollutants I'm pumping into the atmosphere, and hotel costs, airline ticket, and all the rest of it. And here we are, costing next to nothing, because we have to pay for the internet anyway. It's an essential utility now. So then Corona came along, and now it's the only way to network, because networking face to face at 1 meter distance or 2 meter distance is counterintuitive. It's oxymoronic. So it's of its time now, virtual networking. Yeah. And as you know, Anne-Marie, at the end of the day, business boils down to people and trust. So what I'm trying to do is curate and cultivate these online communities. And one of my groups is all about biotech. I don't have the first clue about biotech, but what I do know is when you get 2 or more people that have an interest in biotech in the same room, you're much more likely to have a meeting of minds.
Yeah. What I love about what you're doing is you're creating these platforms, these communities where people with like-minded interests, like-minded passions, and many people that I see now in those groups, they're innovators. We have all now been challenged to think differently. Some industries more so than others, of course, particularly those who are now looking at hybrid environments in work and obviously supply chains changing, all of that. But what I love about being able to be connected with like-minded people across the globe, what you've just said, communication can often be instant. For instance, yesterday, if I virtually flew and had conversations with people in the US, then in Kenya, but that original person was from Ghana, and he is doing some amazing things. And I said, well, I need to connect you to Mark. And when I was speaking to Shiru yesterday, I said, well, I need to connect with you because she's in South Africa as well. And here are these individual conversations connecting with people across the globe, all through WhatsApp, through Zoom, and of course using this platform as well. Those conversations would never have happened were it not been for these online platforms.
Absolutely, yeah. And it changes people's lives. Meeting. I'm all about hashtag social selling. So building up the relationship with the people first, taking an interest in what they do, and also diversity and inclusion is quite important to me as well, because like the Powerful Women group, which you're a member of, I think it's important to have some men in there. And the fact that I'm a white man and Chiru, who's over in Africa, is as a black woman, I love all that. you know, to mix things up and engage with a broad section of people globally. It's fantastic.
It is. And, my core mission is to change the world one message at a time, one podcast at a time. And when I think of the conversations that you're having, that I'm having, if I think of Samuel Badu, by the way, this is Mark that I'm going to connect you with. I know that he often watches and listens to the podcast. I mean, he's creating an incredible platform that will enable insurance to be provided, sponsored or paid for by people in US, for people in Ghana that do not have the ability to access that. And that kind of thing to me excites me, because we are changing lives through the connections, or someone may have a conversation with someone in your group that all of a sudden has an idea or says something that completely catapults a new way of thinking, a new way of
Absolutely, yeah.
That kind of thing I think is exciting, because again, we would never have been in that conversation and had that opportunity to speak were it not be for these platforms. What are some things that you see people are doing when they're transitioning from going, okay, Mark, I know we need to go from offline and in person to online now, but are there some differences in networking that you see as quite distinct and we need to be aware of as we continue to network, so that we're doing it the right way as we're now approaching and leveraging many of these online platforms?
Sure. By the way, please invite your friend to my insurance group, and be happy to introduce him to some people there. I've written an article on LinkedIn about virtual networking etiquette, how to conduct yourself when you're networking this way. But most of it's common sense. For example, if someone,
it's not so common anymore, I've recognized, Mark.
Yeah, that's very true. But yeah, courtesy basically. So, for example, when someone new enters into a group and they introduce themselves, then say hi, welcome to the group. Tell them who you are and what you do, and even immediately then there might be some synergies and a reason to connect.
Yes.
The rest of it is, be courteous and respectful is all intuitive, really. And just take an interest in people. I like being playful because that brings out the human side. And heaven knows, we're just constantly nowadays being approached by bots, effectively, and communicating with robots. So when people join a room, I encourage them to tell people who they are, what they do, who they want to meet, and also a little bit of their private side. What they like mountaineering, or they've got a dog, just to show their human side, and build those relationships.
Yeah, so important. And I think often too, why I ask that is I've noticed even in networking groups face to face, when back in the day when that was available, or we
Good old days.
Yeah. That people would still, there would be some that would be interacting with others, and there would be others, probably a bit more to myself, that tend to hang out with people you already know anyway because it's safe. And then there are other people that just really stand around the interim and not really going in. And so I love the way that you're really encouraging people to speak up and to share, because you just never know kind of the conversations that you start. That, as I love the way that you be curious, be interested in others, and whatever support that you can provide them when you do that and you lead with real value and interest. I think that's a solid way to be able to build a relationship. And
I'm finding that there are three types of people. I find there are people who hate networking. It frightens them. They feel intimidated by it, a bit like public speaking. It's just not for them. Then there are people who quite like it but just don't have the time.
Mhm.
And then there are people like me who really get off on it and love connecting dots and joining forces with other networkers. And those are the main three types,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah, you're a
Mm.
real connector, a supporter, and a key component of a skill that many business owners, entrepreneurs don't have. So if you haven't connected with Marc, stick around because we'll share how to do that and how to tap into his incredible networking groups on WhatsApp too. So that gives us an insight into some of the ways that we really should be approaching relationships, and relationships being the key point. It's not, join a group and then all of a sudden start selling your wares. People will be turned off.
That's a
But
big no-no. Yeah.
absolutely. Let's talk about how to grow our network exponentially, but I also think strategically too, because I know that there's been instances where I've attended networking groups, and to be honest, it's, because there's different networking groups, you have to be really mindful about, what's the purpose, what's the intention. So how do we grow our network?
Well, the obvious place to start would be on LinkedIn. So whatever the area that you work in, for example, let's say you work in nanotechnology. If you search for hashtag nanotechnology on LinkedIn, you will find people involved in that industry, probably thousands, if not tens of thousands. Then you reach out to them with a personalized invite and say something like, well, I would say, I've got a WhatsApp group all about nanotechnology. Would you like to join? And most people are receptive to that, because I'm not actually selling them anything. I'm inviting them to a group which by definition will interest them.
Yes.
Same with Twitter. If you search for certain hashtags, you will find people in your particular industry. And as you know, our mutual friend Keith is a master of Twitter, and he's constantly on it, bit like I am with WhatsApp.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, it's Twitter and Facebook which are my main go-to. Although today I'm going to start using Facebook much more. Historically, I've only used Facebook for personal reasons, but I'm now going to start using it for professional ones too.
Yeah, fantastic. A couple of points that I want to point out, what you've just mentioned, in case people have missed this, is that you're strategically using platforms, and there's intention and there's a strategy behind that. So often I think, and you'd hear people say, yeah, I've done the whole networking thing, Marc, it just doesn't work for me. Well, it does work. It's just that you're doing it the wrong way. There's no strategy, there's no intention. And I'd imagine that when you started, obviously you've always been using WhatsApp. That's something that you said that you and other countries specifically use. LinkedIn has been a platform that you've really been building on. And now, of course, Twitter, of course, too. Now you're adding another platform, and, you're kind of expanding in that way. When you start to look at different platforms, what are some things that you look out for that will give you a determining factor? Yep, this is a good place for me to kind of build my foundations. Are there some things that you look out for specifically?
Well, reach. I mean, LinkedIn of course, is the world's largest business social media platform, and the reason I started on Facebook is because it's so vast, and I mean, there are so many. Where do there's TikTok, of course, which is got a bit of a bad rap recently, but then there's Snapchat, but you have to draw a line somewhere. I'd rather just focus on what I've got at the moment. I mean, LinkedIn in itself could provide endless leads. As you know, the return you get from social media is directly correlated to the effort you put into it. So if you or I were to spend all day today on LinkedIn, we will get new people in our network without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And so it really is being consistent in what you do, having a strategy. Because one of the things that I find, and I have not done that previously, I certainly transparent. When it came to I was one of those people that didn't really like to do networking because face to face really drains my energy. I'm an introvert, an extroverted introvert, and so I kind of avoided them. But virtually, I do enjoy them because it's kind of like having podcast interview. But what I do now is I'm really tracking and monitoring, the conversations that we're starting to have on the WhatsApp group. We connect on LinkedIn. Once you're connected on LinkedIn, each time you share a post, they're more likely to see that. If you engage with their posts, like they will reciprocate. Let's have a conversation via Zoom and let's get to know one another. How can I support your business? And that's the kind of thing I think that we need to do, just consistently have it blocked out. I like to batch my tasks, Mark. So Wednesdays typically for me are the days that I'll connect and in conversation with people. And as you say, it just grows. It just will grow. And you can tweak and monitor. One platform's not working well for you. Maybe, for you it's a different platform. I have to say I love Instagram because I just love the photos. But I realize that my ideal client is more likely to be hanging out on Instagram, on Facebook. I'm on across all the platforms, but on LinkedIn because they are change makers. They're thought leaders, and so sometimes you do have to go to those particular platforms. Now, something else that you want to talk about is around list building. What are some of the things that you're doing as far as building list, and how's that working for you?
Well, I subscribe to Time magazine, and earlier this year, they published the Time 100 list of up-and-coming luminaries, thought leaders, musicians, actors, just interesting people. So I then went to Twitter. I looked them up where they are on Twitter, and then I created a Twitter list of the Time 100.
Yes.
Practically all of them are on Twitter. And then, of course, once you've got that list, it's a very easy way to start following them all. And also you can see who of that 100 has tweeted the most recently, and then engage with them and build up a relationship with them that way.
Yes, amazing. And you use that list to follow them because of an article, which is great. But I'd imagine if we look at this from a business scenario, there may be some key influencers that maybe people might want to start to build a relationship with. And one of the ways to do that is to show interest in what they're doing.
Absolutely.
Share their posts, add value into it, and that's the kind of thing that then builds that relationship. So for you, your strategy obviously is to get in to build the relationship with
and flatter them as well.
Yes.
I've seen you on the Time Top 100 up and coming people. Pander to their ego. Why not?
Yeah. Because you never know. I mean, there may be some things that you see that they're tweeting about that you can, because again, remember, networking is also about connecting people in a network. And so it's not only thinking about sharing, which is all great, what we've spoken about, but you might then see that there's a need and have someone in your network that you think, well, these people really need to connect, which I think is another really valuable way that you can contribute to the people in your network too, isn't it? Being a conduit, being
absolutely. When people ask me what I do for a living nowadays, I just say 3 words: I connect dots. That's all I do, or try to.
Yes, yeah. What would you say when it comes to list building and identifying people, do you find that, I mean, every business obviously has a specific outcome that they are desiring to achieve, and that's going to determine the type of people that they connect with. And, obviously I think, and this is a little bit around, businesses need to niche. They need to have an ideal client and speak to the needs of their ideal client. Would you say that one of the reasons why maybe people are not effectively networking too is considering, who do I need to connect with? Who do I want to build that relationship with so that it is a win-win-win, for everyone at the end of the day? Do you think people put much thought into it, or is it more random?
Well, they do with me, because I ask them,
Yeah.
who is your dream client?
Yeah.
I ask them that so that I know who to introduce them to.
Exactly. Yeah. And again, people, I'm glad you said that, because I think, again, when you're thinking about networking, just like clients, I mean, if you think of the people who are influential or circles of influence in your network, who are they? Who is having the innovative conversations in the industry that you can contribute to or even share with your community, because obviously that content's going to be of relevance as well. So what's in store? What are some of the exciting projects that you're working on, Mark?
Well, I've got a couple of deals cooking. The real magic happens in the small niche groups.
Yes.
So one of them, for example, is gold. I don't know if you've seen the price of gold recently, but it's in times of crisis, the price of gold always rises. So I know a respected gold trader in Paris, and she deals in gold, and she's got contacts with all the gold mines, etc. And high net worth individuals, financial institutions, and so on, all have not all, but a lot of them do have an interest in gold. So I'm focusing on, have been focusing on that today to get some deals cooking with her.
Yeah. Now, I know, Mark, that, for you, networking, building relationships, everything that you spoke about today is one of your strengths. And it's not, as we said, something that some entrepreneurs, some businesses struggle with. And this is an area that you can actually support them with. You can be there mentoring them, supporting them, training them, all of that. Can you share a little bit more about that? Because I don't want people to go away thinking, well, I'll have to do this and knuckle my way through, when you can hire and be mentored by the expert networker, Mr. Networker himself, king of networking. Share a little bit more about how you can support people, Mark.
Sure. I recently launched virtualpowernetworking.com, and I'm going to be positioning myself as a teacher, basically, to teach people how to network virtually. So I offer a 1 hour power hour where I teach them the methods and the techniques needed in order to network virtually. And or they can retain my services, and for that they've got ongoing support, including weekends, and more importantly, they've got access to my network, so I can introduce them to amazing people like, podcasting queen Anne Marie. Do you know her?
Yeah, I heard about it.
She's amazing.
Bit of an introvert at times. You can't really find her sometimes when she's not podcasting. Anyway, no, but you know what? We laugh, but there's so much value in that. I mean, you could put someone in connection with the person that opens the door to an opportunity that could have taken them years, if maybe never have found, because of the diverse networks that you've had. And I think when we're talking about trust, you mentioned something before about trust, and I think that's so important. And Edelman is an organization that I follow, highly respected in the area of trust, Mark, and they do an annual survey with thousands, I would say probably tens of thousands of people around the globe, to identify what does trust mean to you and how do we build trust. And what's come out of the most recent survey, there's a bit of a trust bubble at the moment because of what's happening. You know, people are really scrambling to government, to online news, to news, media and so forth to find out what's happening. But prior to that, they were saying there were two factors that would build trust, and that was around integrity. So obviously ethics and competence, which is excellent. And so to build trust can take time. So for you to have taken the time to build trust, because if you recommend someone, automatically that kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It almost kind of like shares a level of trust to the person that you're now bringing into the conversation. And that's priceless. That's priceless to have a door.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think as business owners, we don't value that enough. So, you know, on behalf of everyone who's in your WhatsApp groups, I mean, we thank you because we would not be able to have conversations such as these.
But it's people like you that make the network so valuable, Anne-Marie. All I'm doing is facilitating the connections, but it's people like you that have got the raw talent that I don't have.
You know what? And I'm just going to share that right back to you because I'll say all I'm doing is asking questions and being curious, you know, and isn't it, it's uncanny. And I think we've had this conversation before and everyone can relate to this. When we are in flow and we're doing the thing that we have put on this world to do, it's just, I'm only doing this, but to someone else, that's absolute gold. And you are gold, Mr. Marc.
So are you.
Can you share one more time the link and just some of the ways that people can connect directly with you, Marc, please?
Sure. Well, there's virtualpowernetworking.com, which is my new funnel. Then I guess the most important one would be my phone number, so you can connect with me on WhatsApp. So that's +44 for the UK, and then 7906786505. I'll repeat that: +44 7906786505. I'm not a big fan of email, but I should really give my email, I guess. It's Marc with a C at mjconsultancy.com. That's EMJAY consultancy.com.
Fantastic. And of course, just Google Marc Jarrett and even on LinkedIn as well. I think that, you know, to first and foremost, go and connect online, because one of the best things that someone can do is to go and observe a master, you know, someone who's mastered a skill, and just see how they do that. But certainly connect with Marc. And once again, thanks so much. I always love catching up and seeing what you're doing on the other end of the planet. It's very late for you, and I really appreciate you for staying up and taking the time to share your gold with our audience. So once again, thanks for coming on the show.
Always a pleasure, Anne-Marie. Take care. Have a great day.